move elsewhere. Thank you very much. If we then start with the finance reports, Terry.
Thank you, Alison. So page 173 in the pack, item 16 is the financial results for the first 6 months of the year, so April through to September inclusive. If I just start with the income and expenditure position, so we're reporting a 4.1 million deficit for the first half of the year. So clearly, as Emma was describing in terms of the operational performance, there are similar challenges financially. Joe touched upon briefly in his chief exec's update that there has been some positive news in terms of recent financial performance, and just to describe that in a bit more detail. So when we were looking at these results for the period of month 4, the deficit that we had on a cumulative basis was £6 million. So for 2 successive months, we've been reporting in month surpluses, taking us from 6 effectively down to a 4 million deficit. The principal drivers of that are one, the recognition of income due for elective care delivery. So we brought most of that into the reported position in month 5 in line with the guidance for NHS England. We've seen a second consecutive month of good news on that front, which has then moved us into the 4 million deficit position. The principal challenges we continue to face in terms of financial affordability are around the impact of industrial action, and clearly the sort of cost of cancellations and rescheduling that work to try and keep sustaining progress around the elective recovery side. The other main area of challenge for us as continues during the year is the impact of inflation on affordability. So the level at which the NHS has been funded in the planning settlement is quite significantly below the rate of inflation that's run through the economy. I think the most recently published results on that side of things for CPI, for example, a couple of weeks ago, we still sat at 6.7%, and we were up at double digits for a significant part of the first half of the year. That is showing no sign of abating, so we're continuing to see a pressure on the organisation from that. Things that have been going on just over the summer period, because it was very busy in terms of efforts around financial efficiency savings and some of the productivity throughput points that Emma touched upon. We'll note in the report that there's a table in here that shows the efficiency schemes that we have saved. So again, just to call out some of the figures around that we discussed in some detail on Tuesday at Finance and Investment Committee. The organisation has a savings target annually of £17.3 million, which is in or around 5% of our turnover. Historically, that is very, very high in terms of the level of relative delivery from the NHS. And that figure contains a stretch target that was agreed with NHS England at the beginning of the year in the setting of a balanced plan. We have moved in terms of progress against that target from a level of identified savings in and around 6.8 million at the end of August to up at a level in this report of 15.6 through the summer. So there's been an awful lot of work and time and energy put in from the teams across the organisation. That position as of last week has moved up to 15.9 million, and we are getting close to about 90% of that target. That is very, very positive news when we look at the levels of historic delivery. The traditional challenges that exist around that, those still remain for this year, i.e. the recurrency of some of the levels of savings in there. So there's a lot of work around trying to reinforce those savings and get that level of recurrent delivery up as we exit this finance year, because clearly any things that we're only able to do as a one-off put a pressure on the underlying financial position of the organisation. So a lot of really good work that we're pleased to sort of call out and celebrate, but it's a pretty relentless game that we need to maintain focus on throughout the rest of the year. There's been some indicators more widely on the sort of income and expenditure side around improved budgetary control, and some of the interventions that we've seen deployed last year now starting to come through. So if I just highlight one example of that on the pay position, we have seen for the first time when we look at our temporary spend on agency, so typically within expenditure we're trying to bring down the premium cost of things that we think we can get for better value. This is the first month pretty much since spring 21 that we are close to spending the monthly budget on agency. So it's been a long, long time in coming, and it's a direct result of all of the efforts and energies around both domestic and international recruitments. We are starting to see some inroads coming through there. Yvonne, Danielle, and I think others in this room are leading work now looking at rostering practices to try and turn the tide on some of our bank expenditure. Because unlike the agency, that's been stubbornly at a level of about 2 million a month for a year or more now. And again, this isn't easy. Clearly, we're going into busy periods around winter, so there's a lot of pressure to drive up the usage. But again, that forensic focus around booking practices, rostering controls, and levels of requirement is going on in the background. Just a brief point. So I touched upon the elective recovery position. What we'll see in the report here is that we are reporting performance of about 114%. In terms of relative activity delivered this year compared to the 1920 baseline, which continues to be the basis of measurement for NHS England. We are still, I guess, slightly frustrated in trying to wait for payment for that activity. So we still haven't been paid for that overperformance right the way back to levels delivered in April, and only at the point that we get all of that thing finally reconciled and paid down, we have the cash in the bank, will we get renewed confidence in that policy and our ability to accurately estimate the amount of money coming into the organisation. That is key for a couple of reasons. Clearly, one, it will impact on the forecast for the year end and judgments around that. And of equal or more importance is the point Emma was making around buying in available activity outside of the organisation through insourcing or outsourcing arrangements. We have today around 10 insourcing, outsourcing agreements across a variety of specialties in place, and our ability to make judgments around increasing to that is pretty closely tied to the payment and recognition of that elective recovery performance. I think my diary certainly, and perhaps Joe's this afternoon, has some sessions with NHS England where they're going to be doing some updating on their decisions and guidance for the second half of the year. So we await that with some interest. And my hope from that session is that we hear something perhaps about compensation and monies due around the impact of the industrial action as well. So we'll update on that one. I was just watching Joe's face, and perhaps he's not feeling as bullish as me going into that session. You'll notice from the sort of table in the front exec summary point that we are showing just a couple of the metrics, 9 million less in terms of the cash balance compared to the plan. Two principal reasons for that. One, again, the elective recovery payments, so £3.2 million for this period hasn't yet been paid across. And recently we've also agreed to access a grant from the local authority, so Milton Keynes Council, of about £5.7 million as a contribution towards the cost of construction of the radiotherapy unit. So when those two things settle, that will bring us back closer to in line with the cash plan. From a capital point of view, we are tracking at the halfway point in the year, broadly in line with plan, so £16 million in expenditure, and we're showing about 14.5. Clearly, the ramp up in the second half of the year, we have to spend somewhere in the region of sort of £36–37 million. So there's quite a steep run. There is confidence in the organisation that we will get there. We have a history in recent years of delivering quite an aggressive step up in expenditure in the second half of the year compared to the first half capital investment. So there aren't any concerns within the team around that. But again, just to acknowledge for the session today. I'll pause there and just take any sort of questions. There's a lot of information contained in the pack, and we had a decent discussion on Tuesday as well in the investment committee. So if I just open.
Thank you. Gary.
Tell you, apologies if some of that I've missed it. But in terms of the savings that we're heading towards this year, great job that we're heading towards the number. Could you just dive down a bit for me and let me know how much of the savings that we're hitting this year are recurring savings of the 16 point something that we've identified,
Sure.
and what the annualised value of the recurring savings are, because the in-year value will be a part of your impact.
Sure, yeah. So what we're seeing when we look at the breakdown of that figure, so if I call it around 16, just to keep the numbers kind, we've got a 70-30 split at the moment in the wrong direction. 70% of it is being classified as non-recurrent delivery and 30% recurring. The big point in there that would tip that completely the other way around is when we get a published policy decision around effectively the payment for that elective activity, so the ERF income. Of that 16 million I've just described, about 5.5 million is our estimation of overperformance against that activity baseline. Now, I think everybody in the room recognises we're going to be still making inroads against that backlog next year and more likely the year after. Therefore, that should be, in essence and in practical sense, a recurrent scheme. And if that were to convert, that would mean we have a 65% recurrent position against 35 non-recurrent. That ratio is pretty close in my eyes to historic levels of recurrent non-recurrent for the NHS. And we were talking in a couple of meetings earlier on this week about the work that's going to go on reviewing those other schemes in the second half of the year to try and get that north of 70% and ideally as high as possible. So I think that is a relatively strong position in terms of the annualized impact. So we can see, if nothing else changes from today, we have a gap of about 1.3 million or so, called 1.5 to that annual target that would directly hit the underlying deficit of the organisation if it isn't closed. If we keep that 30% non-recurrent, you could see another sort of 3 to 4 million coming through as an underlying pressure, and that becomes part of an opening deficit position into 24-25. Now, it is too early today at the beginning of November to say that's where we're going to end up, but it is as a result, as I was saying, of some of those pressures around the inflationary burden, and some of the sort of premium costs we're managing around the impact of industrial action and a variety of other things. So it's multifactorial. What isn't shown in this report, because this is pretty much exclusively focusing on financial performance for this year, is the work that we are already progressing quite nicely in the background around schemes for 24-25, because the challenge will be the same. And there's a decent menu of quite big initiatives that are going to be coming through for initially exec conversation, and then we'll find their way into the relevant board subcommittee. So I'm not sitting here sort of patting the organisation on the back saying, we're home and hosed and this is all fine, thanks for your effort over the summer. What we're saying to teams is really good inroads, good progress, but we absolutely need to be relentless in pacing these things through, monitoring the impacts of them so that these opportunities don't slip through our fingers. We'll see what this afternoon brings. I am glass half full, and we'll see what announcements we get from NHS England. Clearly, if you take that half-year position and extrapolate it on a through basis to what it would equate to at the end of the year, we'd be looking in a starting sense of the deficit of about 8 million. There are some things in terms of opportunities and risks that we discussed in the Finance Committee on Tuesday that aren't shown in here. So it's not as simple as that. And as I said, we are expecting there to be some recompense and compensatory payments for some of the big macro risks that the entirety of the NHS is managing this year.
I do have a little bit of, I hear what you're saying, thank you. And the purpose of my question was to get a focus on what issues we may be facing next year, because we've plugged the gap with one-off measures this year. And so how worried should we be? Because clearly nearly hitting the target for this year is a great message, but we don't want to be complacent. My only underlying concern is if we are counting some of the elective payments when we've seen that regime, when they pay us shift and change, and we're still not certain around it this year. It's just a fact. I mean, I understand conceptually it would make sense to do it. I'm not arguing with that, but it is a little bit of a worry.
I think we've discussed that at Finance and Investment Committee almost endlessly, because I think up until about June, it would have felt acceptable to understand there was a decline lag. By the time we get to October, November,
It's a little bit barking. Yeah.
Let's not hope we're going to have a repeat cycle. And also because, again, the activity levels are being driven really well relative to the target and allowing for strikes, etc. I know the target's changed. I think this, I do agree, Gary, and I think we acknowledge that point at Finance and Investment Committee. And I do think the point around the risks and opportunities is important and was talked about at some length, because they could each play out both ways. A risk could be both a positive and a negative, as could the opportunity. And I think we were talking about that in terms of it's going to have to stay very firmly, obviously not totally, but stay very firmly on all of these pieces as we move forward, and to be really, really clear about what the underlying position means at the end of this year into next year. But it's certainly incredibly challenging. Yeah.
I was just going to say, Terry, it's your last finance report.
It's not ever.
You haven't seen the plan.
Yes.
I mean, what's nice is that we started off at a 2 million a month run rate deficit, and you're leaving as that run rate has turned into a monthly surplus. So I think you can be proud of where we are going as an organisation and the finances. So I'm sure the board will agree with me that you've been great. We wish you the very best of luck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also on that, Joe's probably just to, because I forgot to ask you earlier, unfortunately I've got a nudge from one of our governors. I did say about the new finance director.
Yes, so two things. One is Daphne Terry Deputy will be acting up over the next few months. And we have appointed Jonathan Dunn, who is currently at Mid and South Essex, who was previously finance director here many years ago, 7 years ago, in fact, to come in to replace Terry. And he's coming in.
Thank you very much. Terry, did you have any more to say around the report or?
No, that's,
No.
yeah.
Yeah.
Fine for me, thank you.
Great stuff.
Joe, is Jonathan going to appear before February? If we wanted to,
Sure he will.
yeah.
Oh, yes, yeah. To have some introductory chat. Yeah. So, thank you very much, Terry. Thank you. And yes, best of luck to all of them. Workforce report.
Thank you, Alison. So take the report as read and just pull out some key points. I think as Terry's already said, our temporary staffing usage has come down, which is really good news. And it's really down to all the hard work that all the operational managers are putting in, making sure that we're maximising the use of the staff account. Recruitment continued to work hard. Headcount has increased again. We've now got nearly 4,300 people in post at 4,278. So that's good news. The vacancy rate has fallen again as a result. Staff absence has decreased slightly from previous months, but as we're coming into winter, I think you can expect that to go up a little bit as we get into the cold and flu season. I'm okay with that for now. Turnover has stubbornly stayed the same this month, but we're hoping we will see a further reduction as we come on to the further into the winter months. We know over summer people take holidays and things and aren't looking for jobs, so we'll just see the knock-on effect of that for another month. Statutory mandatory training appraisals remain within the KPI, which is good news. The HR team have launched a staff consultation on how we pay enhancements, and a lot of people are on leave. That's something that we've actually, lots of other trusts have done that already. Some other trusts are still to do it. So we're middle of the pack with that, but you might see, if you watch out for the comms on that, you'll see how that develops. Staff Appreciation Week in October ran really well. We do that every year, if you remember, at the end of the summer. Just as a night start to draw in, and we want to give people a little thank you and pick me up before the winter starts. So that ran in first week in October and went really well. Our staff survey and Reflect and Protect, as Joe mentioned earlier, has launched, and it's also going really well. We're fully booked for the first few weeks, so good news. The team are working and rolling out the new Appraisal with Values toolkit to make sure that all the appraisals are done with our values in mind. And we continue to work on the culture programmes and triangulate the data we get from staff survey and listening events and exit questionnaires, etc. The team are also launching Courageous Conversations training for managers, and that will really help people deal with how to raise a concern and how to have a concern raised to them. So we know from when we have our Free Speak Up meetings, not every manager responds in exactly the same way. So we're doing more training in that regard, which is good news. And we've had both Black History Month and Free Speak Up Month in October. So there's been a tremendous amount going on in that regard. Thank you to everyone who's participated in all of the events across the month.
Excellent. Any questions at all? Just one thing I was thinking, probably through the workforce committee, but I suppose one of the things that's been going through my mind as well, Danielle, is around, recruitment's going well and the whole time equivalence and things like that. But actually it'd be interesting to know as well in terms of skill, with teams where we have, I guess, the right level of skill in the wards, the departments and that sort of thing. It'd be interesting to know. Sorry.
So Alison, I'm going to be taking you a paper in, I've just done an establishment review for the whole hospital. So we'll be presenting that report in December.
Brilliant. I must be psychic then.
It's very detailed here. You'll get that oversight.
When I was reading it, it was going through my mind and I just thought, so I must have sensed you were doing something. Thanks, Yvonne, that's great. So that'll come into sense. Good stuff. Freedom to speak up. Oh, sorry, Jason, sorry.
No, I picked up that somebody had started in the new assistant director.
Yeah, I've got 2 new assistant directors at the moment. I've got Joe Kilmera, who is the assistant director of OD and education. So if you're involved in any of the OD or educational staff health and wellbeing work, then you will see Joe out and about. And I've got Helen Bass, who started as the HR assistant director of HR services. So Helen looks after all of the recruitment side of things, the employee relations, systems, payroll. So Joe, when you see her around very much on the training, development, culture work, and Helen on the nuts and bolts of HR.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Lovely. Freedom to speak up.
So Philip would usually come and present this, but unfortunately Philip's had to take some leave at short notice. So I'm presenting the report today. So please be kind, because I don't have all the in-depth knowledge of the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian that Philip has. So it's a good, I think it's a good news story. We've had an increase in speaking up, which is what we wanted. We know we put extra guardians in and extra champions underneath them. The team have been doing a phenomenal amount of work on getting out and about, getting people to know who they are and what they can do and how they can help. So continuing to see an increase in freedom to speak up, which is good news. We've provided some analysis by case type. Now, what the Freedom to Speak Up Guardians do predominantly is listen, help, and then signpost into other ways of dealing with concern, because the Freedom to Speak Up Guardians aren't there to investigate and reach an outcome. They're there to help make sure that people are being heard and that things are being taken forward. So they're doing really well with that, and provided a breakdown of the cases that we've seen. They continue to identify themes, and when they see a variety of themes coming forward, there's lots of different options for resolution, and it might be that if people wanted to raise things anonymously or informally, there's a theme forming, as long as it doesn't impact on the ability to identify the individuals, then they can help with that and take that forward on an informed basis. The team have also been asked to make sure that we're collecting as much data as we can from people who are speaking up. So starting to collect now equality and diversity data, start making sure that we are categorising data reports in a way that allows us to spot themes when we need to. Not everyone wants to provide all their data, so we're very much being mindful of what the individual wants to provide, but asking for it when we have it. The team have been very active at the moment. We've recruited more champions, and Philip has, and the other guardians have plans to train them, make sure that they are able to help. But we are really pleased that we have such interest still in people wanting to be champions. It's really good news. Philip and the team are very connected in with the regional and national teams, and keep up to date on all the changes that may come through in terms of process procedure, and also on national themes and other areas of best practice. The team continue to work for the CQC readiness group. We know that if and when we are inspected for CQC, there are a series of things that will be asked about that freedom to speak up, and the team continue to make sure that we are able to do that. And there's a local self-assessment, which we've done for this year, and I think we brought that a couple of boards ago, and that lent us an action plan, which we're implementing. So that's a very quick update on freedom to speak up.
I think it's worth noting as well, I mean, obviously seeing on these meetings and then also with the networks as well, that are around the growing, almost like buddying, working together with networks and the freedom to speak up, because it has to be a sort of a joint effort, doesn't it, really, so that there's a real closing the loop sort of thing. So, any questions? Okay, thank you very much. Going on then to Jason.
I was going to ask if I know that this was obviously that's over 6 months.
Yeah.
With last month, freedom to speak up month, did we see an increase in traffic at all, or was that not really measurable?
Sorry, I don't know the answer to that. No, because even though I'm the exec lead for it, I don't have ready access to all of the casework that they do. By nature of the fact that freedom to speak up has to be able to be completely anonymous if it needs to be. So I don't know if their cases have gone up, but I'll get that report when it comes through, and I'll be able to bring that back to a future board. But I won't know until I hear from Philip in this month.
We can always, I mean,
We can bring it back next. We can bring it,
yeah, and I mean also once that's through, we can let non-exec colleagues know, what the things are before we have the discussion at board. So.
Danielle, thank you for the report. I also looked at the graph and, oh my God, that's lots of, but it's great that we have so many new champions and, you know, you can understand why. I looked at the amount of time for the 2 guardians that are busy. It's like half an hour a week. And I just wondered if that was, you know, enough.
Yeah, so
What
we've
can they
got
do in half an hour?
So half an hour, half a day.
it's half a day a week.
Yeah.
No, well, you've got 0.5 hours per week. I read that. as
Yeah,
half an
I
hour.
read it like that.
Yeah, I think
It's
that
half a day for the nursing for tea guardian. Is that just wrong?
I have to check.
Okay.
I know I think it's half a day per guardian, but the Freedom to Speak Up Lead guardian is paid 15 hours a week. So it's, he is full-time, sorry, he's employed substantively, and the other do it as part of their other roles essentially. But I'll check that.
I thought it was just an error because I'm sitting on the Freedom to Speak Up committee. So my understanding is they have half a day a week
Okay.
to do the work. You shouldn't do much. You could take it off.
It's not really, I mean, it's not just put this report, but I think just the power of conversations around speaking up really generates, just looking at the increase as well in the numbers of referrals and contacts with Freedom to Speak Up Guardians. So we've been doing lots of work, and one of our medical education leads did some work with medical students around their experiences, which is, you know, around sexism, and that conversation has then led to a whole load of other conversations around people's experiences and how we do work around changing some of that. So I think it's really positive. It drives positive behavioural change and gives people the courage, hopefully, to speak up on really difficult issues. The more we do it, the more we have those conversations, the more hopefully we'll get those conversations going in the organisation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Annual infection prevention and control.
Thank you. So item 20, page 182 of the main pack. This is the annual report for 22-23. It's a little bit more timely than what we had last year. So some of you may remember that was probably 6 months ago. When we discussed the year previously, I think we all felt the document was somewhat generic. It was educational and interesting. It didn't really tell us what we were doing well here, or indeed despite the gaps. I hope this report's a bit better, but it's still a work in progress. I think key things to highlight were the 2 cases of MRSA, one of which was potentially avoidable. More higher profile than the C. diff rates. We've had 19 cases of hospital associated C. diff. Somewhat arbitrary threshold of 9. Most hospitals around the country, certainly in Eastern, had much more C. diff over the last 2 or 3 years than previously. We're not finding so essentially the last week or 2, we haven't had any cases where there's any link. 2 cases at the moment on the outside of this new report, which occurred on the same order within a month or so of each other, and they're being genotyped at the moment. Importantly, good news in terms of surgical site infection, hips and knees, our surgical site infection rates are very low. We've got the revision alert for hips and knee replacement infection can be one of the causes of. I didn't really say any more about it.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I could see you flicking through. I thought you were going to something else. Any questions at all on the annual report? There's a huge amount of information, and also just to acknowledge the enormous amount of work that goes on around it. And it's always a constant, I think, because it's extremely important. So, thank you very much.
Actually, the hip and knee, that's come down. I remember one of the earlier board meetings in the year that the rates were higher. So that's great work. Yeah.
And actually, just thinking about it as well, I mean, it just mixing, we're going to see the robotic assisted surgery recently. I mean, it's fascinating the difference that all that new technology is probably going to make. We can't really use it for hips and knees at the moment, but yeah, looking how things can move forward and, you know, people's recovery time and everything can improve. It's quite an exciting time, I think.
Our 3 quite expensive surgical robots for hips and knees.
Oh, well, they're
not here, they're not.
No. Oh, right. That's interesting. Right. Okay. Something else really suitable. Thank you very much. Going on then to, yes, the research and development annual report.
So quite timely given our story earlier, page 222. I mean, generally speaking, very positive report. We're maintaining our recruitment numbers, as Lynn mentioned earlier, and our income importantly for me, the spread of specialties is improving. So there's access to research across a whole wide range of specialties rather than being focused on just two or three. On page 228, it highlights some of our award winners at the regional research awards, which is great to see. And then just finally this year, so outside the, so at the moment, rather than 22, 22, 23 reports, Antoinette, our research manager, was research leader of this year's awards, which is great to see. And Professor Simon Bowman, who's a co-secretary of this annual report, has just stood down as director of R&D. And so I'd like to acknowledge his efforts and calm leadership in this area over recent years. And Stuart, who was mentioned in this report, an IT consultant, steps up into that role.
I think one of the things, and just going back to Lynn's presentation as well this morning, is just this whole sort of promotion when you've got a research department actually, and making people or encouraging people to be curious and to ask questions. I think that's so healthy, because then you constantly look at practice and improve things. So I think it's a very, very healthy position to be in, to have a research department like we do.
And just for avoidance of doubt, that's strategic what we've been doing in terms of growing this function. Also, this very building sitting in the medical schools, so it's all about creating an environment where everyone's question, opens questions, and improving the best.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much. Guardian of Safe Working Hours.
So page 230, this is a report which I think has been to the HR subcommittee. So Guardian of Safe Working Hours has been here since 2016 as a role. It's essentially become a mechanism for which the junior doctors to report any hours they're working in excess of their work schedule. Now, clearly there are safety aspects, but it's also a mechanism for them to report additional hours for purposes of payment as well. I mean, that's important in the context of industrial action, given this is the junior doctor's way to report they should be paid more for looking at excess hours, which needs to be factored into this. So the number of exception reports are growing. Generally speaking, I'm pleased about that, because I want to have a culture where people do report where they're working excess hours. But I would carry on that for the industrial action issue I just mentioned. The number of exception reports is still tiny though, so 299 across a year. I think that on calculation cost numbers, there are probably 40,000 junior doctor shifts in our organisation per year, so it's a very small portion where exception reports are lodged. Most of these exception reports are coming from very junior doctors in general medicine and general surgery. Not a particular surprise, because that's where those doctors work. It's supposed to be a portion in those departments. But it's the most junior doctors typically. From my perspective, the issues being raised are being addressed where possible and feasible, with the help of the Guardian where necessary. Where it isn't possible to address them, to say, so are resulting in some.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Hey.
So, thank you. And just the so on the unresolved, the 32 unresolved ones, could you just give us an idea of why they might be unresolved?
And so often they'll be unresolved timing issue around ultimately towards the end of the year. But I need to go back to Janet with the Guardians to talk about that in more detail. When I push out specifically, are there departments where clinical supervisors or clinical managers are not engaging with you and their juniors? The answer is always no. So the admin stores.
So we could bring this back to or just update outside the meeting.
So I'll update outside the meeting.
Yeah.
There are 300 a year. It will take 4 to 6 weeks typically to resolve one of these things, and therefore at a cut-off point you may have that problem. I'll go back to translation.
I think as well in that comment, that question will be limited in the workforce meeting, because we asked the question. I don't think Ada was present at that meeting, but that was so.
So it's been noted in the subcommittee.
I think it has been noted as well, so it will be followed up.
Yeah.
So I'll get an answer for both committees.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you very much. Risk register report.
Thank you. Two reports here: risk register and insurance framework. So the risk register report first. There's Paul Ewers and Ruth Palmer been doing a lot of work around trying to present this in a way that is easier to analyse. And we've got some more work that's going on around that. But there's some graphs here that look at the sort of split around risk. So looking at our risk profile in different ways. And what you can see is that whilst the majority of our risks are in sort of corporate areas, the majority of the high risks are in divisional areas. So that is sort of interesting, I suppose, analysis around where our high risk is carried. It's some work here around just sort of risk profiling again on the current risk, where we would be if we reached our target risk score, how we would reduce risk. We also don't eliminate the risk. But I'm happy to take any questions. The corporate risk register is included as usual, as well as that big review report. This is an ongoing piece of work, quite a bit more work to do, but it feels to me at least like we're sort of heading in the right direction in terms of being able to provide a bit more analysis.
Thank you very much. Any questions or anything? Thank you very much. So that's noted.
And just on the board assurance, yeah, very much the champion won't open my skin. So I just put in that we did talk. Gary talked about the seminar at the last board, but conscious I didn't think that was a public board, so I just wanted to bring that back through around the work that we've agreed to do in improving risk processes and our approach to risk management. So I just included that as part of the covering sort of narrative sheet for the board. So we've got a development work programme with risk management to look at revising our reports, looking at how we integrate reports more effectively, how we do triangulation more effectively, how we use different graphical presentations so to avoid board members having to sort of trawl through risk registers. And also work on the board assurance framework similarly to look at sort of risk horizons, risk environment. I think Gary's already met with as part of the ICB around how we develop a system risk approach as well. We've got a board seminar on risk. I think I put it in February, but I think Connie said it was already in for December, so it's considered like and then obviously the BAP is included as it normally is and has gone through committee. We do have a number of very high scoring risks on the board assurance framework at the moment, so you can see it's all clustered in that top right hand corner of the risk matrix. So we are having high risk in organisations strategically.
Yeah. There's going to be some look on the take on those low likelihood.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So, right. Okay, so I mean, we'll have a much more in-depth discussion in December with our seminar. Yeah. Any other questions at all? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. And actually, I think I am looking forward to the discussion. I think it's important as a board that we have some clarity on this, but also just to discuss them. So thank you very much. Okay, next item, update to the terms of reference of the board and its committees. And obviously I'm not going to go and take it as everybody's had a look through. So on any of these, is there anything anybody wants to feedback in terms of the amendments that are being made? Everybody happy with those? I mean, I know this is done through a process of feedback anyway in the committees and stuff. Okay, so if everybody's happy, we can approve those. Thank you very much. And then going on to the summary reports from the subcommittees, audit, finance, and the trust executive. Any questions on those, or can we just say noted? Yep. Thank you very much. Use of the trust seal.
Yes, it's required to come here to be formally ratified. So you can see in the paper that it's been used 3 times between the last sort of reported. So twice in September, both relating to work for Lloyd's Court and once in October for a grant agreement.
Right. Any questions on that? Good. Shows the work's progressing, which is good. The forward agenda planner. Anything? No. As I say, asking colleague, Kwame prompted me to ask colleague for any suggestions around seminars as well going into thinking of 24-25, which is quite scary, but because we're nearly there. But anyway, if people would please let me know, or Kwame, be very helpful. Or Kate. Any other business? Oh, sorry, Danny.
Just to say, I've checked off protected working time policy just now, and guardians get half a day a week, so I'll get Philip to correct that in his report.
Right, thanks. It's helpful. I know what he means. Half of the whole time equivalent. That's what he means. Okay.
Yeah, I have an AOB, and just to say this is Kwame's last public report, so I'm going to take it to embarrassing.
You're going to be in so much trouble.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So Kwame will be here until just after the new year, because he is leaving to take up an executive director post at Papworth Hospital, which is amazing, and he will be amazing at it. But I will miss him enormously. And I'd just like to just thank him really for his contribution to the board, which has been huge actually, and to me personally, and also for the corporate more broadly, because he's done some really tremendous work, which in typical sort of way of trust secretaries isn't always seen by everybody, but has been remarkable. So I think keep on.
That's the thing, I told him off because we started at the same time, so he was my real buddy. But I'm kind of forgiven him. But we're going to keep in touch. So yeah, thanks, Kwame, for everything. It's been real helpful.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I know you mentioned earlier, but I also wanted to FNI acknowledge Terry leaving. Yeah, we gave thanks to Terry for tremendous work that he's done.
Yeah.
But also for kind of helping everybody to go on that journey of understanding all the information.
Yeah.
And it was such a delight to work for him. So we have we're very sad to see him go. And I think as Jill is that we are leaving ourselves in as good a place in a challenging time. So it's amicably, but I think Terry's done a huge amount of work. So I'd really like to thank him. On behalf of the finance investment committee at board to be amended at board. Yeah. Thank you.
Lovely. I haven't got any questions. We haven't nothing sexual or anything. So it just leaves me to bring this meeting in public to a close. And again, shall we have time back actually a bit? So good. So if we have another 10 minutes, going to Poplar. Or if it's lunch. Beg your pardon.
I was did you hear that?
I don't know where, I was just thinking, right, okay, we're quite on with it. So you can tell. Yes, by all means, everybody have a bite to eat. So half an hour? One. Yeah, everybody have a bite.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much.